Hello, everyone. This is Jason Cavness from Cavness HR, also host of Jason Cavness Experience. And today we're going to do a live stream on HR laws you have to follow. So I'm going to take a few minutes to get that set up. Hopefully, everyone's having a good morning. Cool. So that's already set up. Okay. You do one more thing. Co-host interaction go. Something that's going to last like maybe 30 minutes. If I can get this set up right. Uh, all right. So I'm going to get started. Um, for some reason, the slides aren't shown correctly on the screen. So let me try to fix this. So I'm just gonna wait for the time to catch up, then I'll get started. So today we're gonna go over the HR laws you have to follow if you're a small business owner. We're forwarding on a few people. So as an introduction, my name is Jason Cavness. I'm a retired Army officer. I host the Jason Cavness Experience podcast. So a top 5% podcast in the world, number 81 tech podcast. Obviously, I'm not Joe Rogan, but I have a decent amount of viewers. Also, I'm the CEO founder of Cavness HR. At Cavness HR, we're building an AI native platform combined with the HR business partner to help small companies of 400 few people take care of the HR. Most HR now is built for corporations, 5,000 or more people. Why is this not showing? Okay, I think I finally have it set up correctly. Obviously, I should have done this before we started. All right, cool. So as a small business owner, so HR is one of those things that is complicated, but it's not right. It's like they each level of government, federal, state, local, lays out the laws you have to follow, right, in black and white. The problem is there's so many of them, it's challenging to follow them all. And Kevin's HR, that's what we want to help you do. So let me check one more thing. Well, actually, I'm good. So there's rules you're gonna have to follow with 40 and fewer people, right? And even if you have one person, technically yourself, you're supposed to follow these rules. And we're going to cover those like in this live stream. And thanks for everyone for joining. Ronnie, Daryl, Jason, great name. Paradise, Nicole, thanks for joining. So I've talked to a lot of small business owners. Some more background. I'm a retired Army officer. Did 25 years in the Army. Where I did HR. After I left the Army, I spent 2 years at a startup called My Unfold. Also spent time as an HR manager at Trident Seafoods up in Alaska. HR director at college. So I have like over 30 years HR experience and over like 10 years dealing with tech startups, right? So I'll probably be all over the place that is the live stream as things pop in my head. One thing to be careful of is like, this is my pet peeve, when HR people say they're expert, right? I mean, it's hard to be an expert in HR, right? Because there's so much stuff in HR. There's like recruiting, benefits, compliance, performance, all this stuff, right? Like if someone says, I'm an HR expert, and you go look their profile on LinkedIn or somewhere else, and they've done like recruiting for 5 years. Are they really an HR expert? And even they say they're a recruiting expert, if they spent 5 years at a manufacturing company, are they really expert in everything recruiting? So always you side eye when someone from HR says they're HR expert. Of course, there are a few, like even me, as knowledgeable I am, I would never consider myself an expert. But there are experts out there, but just take that with a grain of salt, right? So what small business owners want, they want, reliable team, a strong culture. And they want to, there's all those horror stories about, employers taking advantage of employees. I think that's a rare case. I think 9 out of 10 times the employers of small business owners or any size business owner wants to take care of their employees, right? They just don't know how, right? Because there's things you got to consider, the labor markets. What's fair to one person might be unfair to the other person. The example I use is the fair and equal thing, right? Suppose you have two people and you both paying them, we'll say, $60,000 a year. Person A does a great job, everything they're supposed to do, meet requirements, goes above and beyond, they do extra stuff, and like they pull in a really good ROI. Person B just does what they have to do, come to work on time, never around, never help anyone out. They just meet the minimum standards, right? So end of the year, if you give both people a 5% raise, that might be equal, but it's not fair, right? So for me, for a small business owner, it's more important to be fair versus equal. That's my opinion, right? And of course, the biggest thing, biggest stats out there, small business owners lose time and money in HR. The stats show that small business owners spend like 20% of the time each week on HR-related items, anything from hiring, benefits, talking to employees, the whole gamut. It's pretty loosely related. And the other stat is, stats show that small business owners lose around $29 billion a year. Now, if you do the math based on national GDP and other items, that comes out to $10,000 employee per year. So you have like 10 employees, you lose $100,000 per year, which is a lot of money. So one thing I'll say is, as a small business owner, like there's this thing out there, the government's out there every day going to your business, like trying to catch you off guard, whatever. The federal government, state government, local governments, whatever government you want to deal with, they don't have enough time or resources to send people to look at every business in the United States, right? They don't have it to do, right? So what happens is usually someone calls them, like maybe a disgruntled employee or maybe even a competitor, but someone usually calls on you, right? And then they come search you. And the challenge is, like, for example, let's suppose you have someone as we'll say your secretary, right? And your secretary gets a 30-minute lunch break. But every day your secretary says, I'll just take my lunch break here at my desk. And you say, no worries, no problem. Just make sure you don't do any work. Well, let's suppose the year passes and your secretary thinks you're going to get a raise if you don't give her a raise. She gets mad. She goes to the Department of Labor and says, hey, I've had to work through my lunch break the last year. And so what they're going to do, 9 times out of 10, the Department of Labor is going to believe you unless you can prove otherwise. And to make it worse, so you're going to have to pay all that back pay with fines. And on top of that, they're going to say, well, if this small business owner did this one thing wrong, what else they're doing wrong? So they're going to like go through every little piece of thing you're doing, like I-9, onboarding, everything you're doing that you're supposed to do, they're going to comb through that, right? And that's like stuff you don't need. And also there's a lot of potential to get fined out there, right? So on the slide right here, just some average slides. Now, $700 million from EOC, I mean, that's a lot, but it's not a lot. But, it's broken down by categories, by state, by, like sexual harassment and whole different things, right? But one thing, you don't want to have a negative connotation in your business, right? Like employer brand is a big thing. So if you're trying to hire and someone does a search on you, and it says like you have like 3 lawsuits from EOC, they're probably going to work for your company, right? Because all this stuff is public knowledge. Like what's the EOC, Department of Labor, files a lawsuit against you, that's public knowledge forever, right? And you don't want that. And so a lot of ways to get fined. But then again, it's not because they're not going after every little thing. And as long as you do the right thing and, cover yourself, that's what you need to do. If you have any questions while we're doing this, just click in the comments. Let me do one more thing real fast. That doesn't matter. All right, let's go to the next slide. Thanks everyone for joining. And so first one, first law we're going to follow is under one. If you have one person, is the Drug-Free Workplace Act. And this is a lot of confusion about this, right? So the Drug-Free Workplace Act is not for every business, right? This is only for if you have a federal contract with the United States government, right? So if you're like a mom and pop store selling apples, or if you have a restaurant or anything private related, right? It does not apply to you. This is only for federal contractors. Like suppose you apply for a federal contract to, provide software development for the Department of Defense, or you have software, or if you have a federal contract to do HR consulting services for Department of Interior. A lot of people get this confused that every company has to have a drug policy. This is not true. However, this does not count. Like, a lot of people, because of, the moral beliefs, the ethics or whatever the case may be, or the upbringing, or just what they believe, they do incorporate anti-drug policies, right? Now, having said that, this does not apply for insurance, right? So if you have transportation, not a drug company, that'd be messed up. If you have transportation company, electrical company, and then, for insurance purposes, you need drug policies, right? So kind of a fine line there, but strictly for the Drug-Free Workplace Act, it only requires for federal contractors to have drug-free policies. But also you have to, even though if you have a federal contract drug-free policy or drug-free policy in general, you have to be careful, right, to make sure it doesn't discriminate against people who are recovering drug addicts, people who went through therapy or rehab. There's a fine line there too, so you have to make sure you keep care of that. I think the best example I'll give is for do you need a drug-free policy act in your company, or if it matters? Let's suppose you have a donut shop. This is a crazy example. You have a donut shop, and let's suppose your cashier who takes orders smokes dope every day. I mean, does it really matter? Maybe it does, maybe not. Maybe it matters to you, but the big schemes of things, maybe not. It doesn't really affect the business. Now let's say the person makes the donuts, smokes dope every day, and he makes a mistake and catches the donut shop on fire. Well, the insurance companies are going to know if anyone in that shop smokes dope, and it comes back he smokes dope, then your insurance thing might get, not the best outcome you want, right? So yeah, so that's the Drug-Free Place Work Act. Like I understand, a lot of people will do drug-free policies, drug testing based on the personal beliefs, moral beliefs, and of course, like I said, transportation companies, anything safety related needs to have drug testing and drug-free policies. But overall, it's not required unless you're a federal contractor. Next, so you're not allowed to, quote, spy on your people using audio, right? So, example, you can't like put iPhone on your tape an iPhone underneath your employee's desk and record the conversation, right? That's against the law, right? That's very big lawsuits. So you're not you're not supposed to monitor emails, calls, text messages. And of course, there's a different rule for like training that's completely different. Like you're doing sales training or calls training or something like that. That's completely different. This is more for like one-on-one personal calls, one or more personal relationships. Like you can't like monitor your people's calls and say, hey, Jason, I'm monitoring your calls today, and you spent 2.5 hours on your phone doing personal calls. That's against the law. I know some people will say, well, how about how do I keep people from stealing or doing something illegal or against the company rules? So this does not apply to video. You can videotape your people, right? However you want to, right? Of course, it'd be nice if you told them they're going to videotape, right? At all times, to have signs saying you're being monitored. But as long as no audio, like the video, you can have a video camera recording your people at the workplace. There can't be any audio. Audio is strictly forbidden or not allowed. That's a big one. So next one, polygraph test. I know this might be a weird one. I don't think anyone really does polygraph tests. I know there's stuff out there that says, even a court, polygraph tests aren't really administered in a court of law, but a lot of people use them because if someone says, I'm not going to take one, it assumes they're guilty. Or if they take a polygraph test, can't be used in court of law, but, it's like point of direction. I think court of law is like reasonable doubt, and polygraph test, if you fail, is like, more likely than not you did it. So, but there are some exceptions, right? Like, if your company does, I can't think of what it is, but when the armored cars go from bank to bank deliver money, they can get a polygraph test. Medical equipment can get a polygraph test. And there are certain times when you can do polygraph tests. Like for example, suppose you own a car wash, right? Well, let me rephrase that. You have to have a really good reason, like more than reasonable doubt, to do a polygraph test. So for example, suppose you own a car wash, and a customer comes to you and says, hey, I've been using car wash like maybe 3 or 4 years, and like the 3rd time I used your car wash, there's been stuff missing from my car. One time, it was like, each time it's something different missing from the car, right? And so what you can't do is suppose you have 20 people work for you. You can't bring all 20 people and say, one of you stole from this customer, you ought to take a polygraph test, right? You have to narrow it down. And so you have to decide, you have to figure out with the customer, okay, you came these 3 different times, these 3 different days at 3 different times. And so focus on that, who was working those times. And suppose it breaks down, so you're taking down from 20 to 8 people. Like who are those 8 people who are working that time? And then you'll say, okay, my cashier is working. My cashier, my front desk person never leaves that area, right? So like she never goes to car wash at all, never at all. She needs something, she just calls on the phone, use a loudspeaker, right? Because that's where the money's at, taking care of customers doesn't leave. So that breaks it down to 7. So you have 7 people that you can then do a polygraph test on. And then like you can't like do it yourself. You need to bring on an expert, bring a professor in, and obviously that's going to cost some money. So I have no idea how much that money is. But that's the Polygraph Test Protection Act. And once again, only one person can do this. So thanks to Bananas Foster, Kathy Caldwell, Larry Brissett, Dean. As a reminder, my name is Jason Cavness. I host the Jason Cavness Experience podcast, a top 5% podcast in the world, top 81 tech podcast, and CEO founder of Cavness HR, where we're building an AI native platform network, partnering with an HR small business partner, help small business owners take care of the HR. Next one near and dear to my heart, military rights. This one people get confused also, right? So this is mean for like reserves, National Guard. Really doesn't apply to active duty because most active duty is not going to have like a part-time job, or if they do, it's not going to follow these rules. Although technically the rules do apply. But like suppose you have and it goes on both ends, right? A lot of time, U.S. veterans, military veterans, will take advantage of this and use a system to take advantage of the employee. So I'm going to cover that too. But first one, let's suppose you have someone that works for you. They worked for you for a couple of years, and they're like, say, whatever they're doing, right? And then they tell you, they bring you orders to say, hey, my National Guard unit is getting deployed to, wherever they're going, right, in 6 months. And so you can't say, okay, you're no longer good for me, you're fired. They have to keep their job. And then on top of that, they keep everything going like it is going, right? Like suppose 6 months come, they deploy, and 3 months later, they were going to get a promotion. You can't say, no, you can't get a promotion. Everything happens like they were still there. And for example, suppose there's 5 people all working in the same area, and you give 3 of the 5 promotions, but not another person, not the military person. Well, this law doesn't cover the other person, but you're still required to give that military person the raise. Whatever those other people around them was going to get, they're required to get that also, right? And so you have to keep in mind, you can't say you're going to fire him or lay him off. Now, if you can prove, like before you had the orders, the plan was to lay him off, that's a different thing, right? But that's going to be very tough to prove to do. And we're going to go over hiring and firing later on. But having said that, what a lot of military people would do is they'll give the orders, but they won't tell you until the day before, right? As soon as they get orders, or soon after, they're supposed to tell you, hey, small business owner, I'm deploying 6 months. They're not supposed to tell you like the day before, right? And of course, all the rules still apply, or whatever, but they're not supposed to do that, right? It doesn't like give you like it doesn't give you like, clairvoyance. I think I said the term wrong. To say, hey, John Bob didn't give me the orders until the day before he left, I can just fire him now. It doesn't apply like that. But they are required to give it to you like as soon as they get it. So, and on the orders, it'll have a date. The orders are provided, right? It might say like, 1 February 2026. So if they give it to you like, 30 June, the day before they deploy, that's not right. So let's keep that in mind. And also, once they come back, no matter how long they're gone, 1 year, 2 years, you have to reinstate them to the same equivalent position if they want promoted in a time period based on everything else is going on. So this is a big rule you need to follow. But one thing with this, I really don't think anyone like really knowingly breaks this. I think if someone does break this, they don't know about it, and once they find out about what they're supposed to do, they fix it. Because like, no one wants to be known as like an anti-veteran or a company that take advantage of veterans, right? So personally, I don't think many people break this. If they do, it's because like lack of knowledge, which of course is not an excuse. But if they do break it, I think they fix it pretty soon. Thanks, Bradley, for joining. Next one, communication laws, right? So basically, this is like, chemical plants, like not even chemical plants. Like when I was at Trident Seafoods, we used a lot of, I can't think of the term. Man, I can't think of it on the back of my head. But we use a lot of chemicals in the processing that run the fishing plant. And so you have to communicate this stuff, right? You have the thing called safety data sheets all over the place, right? So basically, suppose you have a chemical somewhere as a dangerous chemical. The safety data sheet will tell you what to do if something bad happens, right? What's the first aid is, where to go, all that kind of stuff, right? And you have to have some kind of written communication program, and you need to train your people on safety. And off the top of my head, I can remember how often you have to do the safety training. It's not like every day, every week. I can't recall what it is. I have to look that up and get it back to you. But if you have any dangerous chemicals in your workplace, right? Even if it's like something hidden away, something like, you have 100 people working for you, only one person deals with it. Everyone still needs to know about the dangerous chemical. Everyone knows you need to take care of it. And it's called a safety data sheet. And so, that's something your safety manager or safety people will take care of. If you have no safety person, usually it falls under HR. That's a real big thing. Thanks, Floyd Mayback, for joining. I really appreciate it. All right, so this is another big one. Unions. Unions are not as big as they used to be. Like I think back in the 1910s, 1920s, they were really big. 1960s, they're kind of like not as big as they used to. Although they're kind of making a comeback, right? And so your employees are allowed to discuss wages, schedules, or working conditions, all that kind of stuff. Like a lot of business will say, hey, don't tell anyone what you paid, right? Well, that's against the law. Your employees have the right to tell each other what they make to compare salaries, right? And it's against the law for you to tell them, no, don't do that, right? And I know some states, like the state of Washington, others, it's required for you to put, when you do you're trying to hire people in the job description, it's required for you to put in the job description in the salary. So with unions and stuff, your employees have the right to organize and do a union. So what will happen with like an employee might be like, no, we're getting treated unfairly by our people. And side note, if you have really good HR people, this should never happen, right? If your HR people, yeah, exactly, yeah. If your people do HR for you, are taking care of you and taking your company, they should never want to go to a union, right? Because they're going to take care of everything internally and make sure everything's like peachy keen, whatever you want to say, right? But they do want to go to union and like organize. What usually happens? They go to union and they say we want to have a union come in. Well, the union just can't come in and say, hey, we're a union, we're in here now. The employees have to do an election to vote the union in or out, right? And so what usually happens is, I don't remember the time frame, the union will get like a certain amount of time, like, to campaign to bring the union in, right? Well, 1 month, 2 months, whatever the case may be, which I don't remember. I should know that, but I don't off the top of my head. And so the union will, campaign, what the benefits of the union, right? Benefits, a union can be good, but it does cost money, right? You do have to pay a certain percentage of your salary to the union, whether 5%, 10%, to cover the cost, different things, right? Of the union officials. So that's probably negative, right? Is the cost the employee pays to join the union really worth it, right? Especially if your HR people are doing what they're supposed to do. So I got sidetracked there. So the union comes in, and this is where the different rules apply, right? Generally speaking, the union can do whatever they want. They can like talk to employees one-on-one. They can throw get-togethers, bowling parties. I mean, it's like free game for them pretty much, right? There's really no limits. However, the small business owner, there's a lot of limits, right? Like you can't bring in, Tom Brown and say, hey, Tom, I really appreciate your vote to keep non-union, right? And if you do, I'll help you out, right? Because the perception is, as a small business owner, you have all this undue influence on your employees. Where the presumption is the union does not have all this undue influence, right? So you can't talk to them one-on-one. You can't say, if you vote for me, I'll get you a raise, or you vote for me, this stuff will go on, this positive stuff happen. And you can't say, well, if you don't vote for me, these negative things will happen to you, right? Where the union can talk to people one-on-one, talking whatever kind of ways they want, right? And so also, there are instances when even if the union lost, they will still instate it as a union, right? If there's any indication of undue influence by anyone senior in the company, then the union gets put in, right? For example, there's a case like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. There's several cases like this. There's a company in North Carolina that were going through the union election, and they're going back and forth. And so union election was on Tuesday. That Monday night, the union threw this big get together, right? And so, and this is a crazy story, actually. This is like some cloak and dagger stuff. So the VP of the company, or maybe the small business owner, it was someone who's high up in the company, happened to know where it's at. And so he was in his car, he saw someone walking by, and he told the person, hey, come here for a minute. I need to talk to you. He said, oh, okay, well, you're not supposed to talk to me. Well, it doesn't matter. I want to talk to you anyway. I don't know how this election is going to go, but if you go in there, help us win the election, or the union doesn't get voted in, we'll give you a raise. You do all this stuff for you, right? We'll do a contract on the side where you're hired for life, all that kind of stuff, which legally can't do. And so the guy said, I think about it. And so party that night, the bowling alley. Next day had the election, and the employees voted 90% not to put the union in. So out of 100 employees, 90 voted no. And so, but after that, the person who was told, if you help us out, we'll give you all the stuff for him, he told a couple of people what happened, right? And he said, well, I know I didn't do anything to help the election, the union not get elected, but man, I'm still going to go to the boss and say, hey, you need to take care of me, right? And of course, those two people told other people, and it got back to the union. And so what the union does, the union went straight to the court, straight to the judge, and filed a lawsuit. Maybe not a lawsuit. I think it's called filed an injunction, right? And so the judge heard other information. The judge ruled, hey, even though 90% voted against the union, and even though this person admits that he had nothing to do with this, and undue influence, right? So the judge put the union in, right? So unions is something you have to be very careful of. And these are ruled by the National Labor Resource Board, no, National Labor Relations Board. So, but like I said, if you have good HR people, or if you're a small business owner who's good at all, you shouldn't have to worry about this. I know when people say, what makes us a good small business owner? I'll say, like, if you're a good small business owner, you're going to treat people the way you want to be treated if someone is your boss. Next one, OSHA. Like, this is not going to, this is most like safety related, companies, transportation, chemicals, oil, stuff like that, electrical companies. Like you have a accounting company, they're probably not coming to your place. They might come to your place. You have like a restaurant, maybe not. But OSHA, they can come anytime they want to. Obviously, OSHA, violations are a big thing. You don't want to be known as a company with OSHA violations. Once again, man, I just realized my picture's not on here. So let me try to fix that real fast. I'll do that later, I guess. So yeah, I apologize for my picture not being on here. I'll put it on later. I have to figure out how to do that later. So yeah, basically anything safety related that can come in. And once again, obviously you have like a nuclear power plant, they're gonna come on a regular basis, but just make sure your place is safe. Equal pay laws. This is something else a lot of people get confused about too. So the law was passed back in 1964, so it's not a new law, Equal Pay Act. But it's mainly based on like your labor market, different things, right? So it's based on gender, but it's not really not, right? I think a lot of people get confused. I might get some blowback on this, right? But basically how it works, like for example, Post Tom Brown does marketing and he has a master's degree. He's been in the company 10 years. And then Susan joins the company fresh out of college with a bachelor's degree, no experience. They don't get paid the same, right? Because they have different positions. And even if they have the same positions, the other guy has a master's degree and 10 years experience, so he'll probably get paid more. He has more time in the company, right? Probably a good or bad example I can use when I had a friend one time post on LinkedIn, like, man, I can't believe this. It's bullshit. Females gonna pay the same as men. I'm here, Arkansas. I'm an HR business partner, and she said she didn't use it, but our friend works at Amazon, getting paid like almost 3 times than me. And I told her, I really don't think you should have put that out there, right? Because first of all, you work for a nonprofit in Arkansas in a small town, right? And our friend works in Amazon, a multi-billion-dollar company, right? It's like comparing not even apples to oranges, but like apples to T-bone steaks, right? I don't know. I just think a lot of people get this messed up. But I know the stats out there show, I think females get paid 75% to the dollar. That stuff is out there, right? And so this is how I think you fix this, right? Because the law is out there. I think most people do follow it. So I think 2 things are happening. And I've talked about this in my podcast a few times, and the stats show this, right? So I think how you fix the equal pay gap that's out there, a lot of people say it's out there. Some people say it's don't. I'm not smart enough to know what's out there. You can look at all the economic stats out there. So 2 things happen, right? Suppose Tom Brown, let's call him Tom. Let's suppose Tom and Susan join the company at the same time. They're going to get hired for the same job. We said they're both going to do marketing. And they both get offered $50,000 a year. Stats show 95% of the time, Tom's going to say like, hey, $50,000 is not enough. I do this, I do that, blase, and he'll ask for a raise. And maybe they'll say yes, maybe they say no. But let's suppose they say yes, and instead of $50,000, he starts at $60,000 a year. And then Susan, 95% of the time, stats show that she as a female would say, thank you very much for the opportunity, and she'll take the $50,000. And this is where, the salary talk needs to come into contact, right? Because this, like, Susan should be asking Tom, hey, what do you get right? But most time people don't do that. And so Tom 60,000, marries Susan. Tom 60, Susan 50, right? Right off the bat, the pay's messed up. I know some people say, like, I know a couple of startups in the Bay Area in Seattle, they're like, we don't negotiate. What do you offer you? That's what you take, right? So I don't agree with that. I just think we need to, make it where females are more inclined to, like, ask for more, so to speak. And I know some people will say, well, females shouldn't do that. The small business owners like keep everything equal, but I don't know. So 60,000, 50,000, right? And let's suppose 6 months passes, right? Well, let me backtrack. That 6 months, 6 months passes. In those 6 months, Tom is like, he goes to work on time, does what he's supposed to do. That show that he's gonna ask for a raise. He'll be like, hey, he won't say I've been working on time. He'll say, I'm meeting standards, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. He may get a raise, he may not. And so the boss said, you know what? We're doing good. I'll give Tom a raise. A lot of times, small business owners just give raises really neatly. They don't really do the research like they're supposed to. So now from 60,000, he has 65,000 per year. Susan, during the first 6 months, she closed like a multi-million dollar deal, brought in a lot more revenue. She's like a superstar, right? And her friends, people come like, hey, man, you just raised this big deal. You just made the company a lot of money. You really need to ask for a raise, a promotion. You need to ask for something. Stats show 95% of the time, Susan's going to say, no, I'm just doing my job. So Tom, the average worker, is now making $65,000 a year. Susan, the superstar, is still making $50,000, right? It's getting worse. So a year comes, time for annual raises or annual performance reviews. Tom and Susan both get, reviews. And, they both meet the metrics, whatever. They both get a 5% raise. So 75,000 times 5% is way more than 60,000 times 5%. So that's my spiel on how I think you fix the Equal Pay Act. And once again, just like the military thing, I really don't think like most small business owners or business owners in general are purposely saying, hey, I'm gonna hire Jason, pay him $100,000. I'm gonna hire, Mary, give her 85,000, right? I don't think it's like that. I mean, of course, I'd be totally wrong. And one thing people don't realize, it's a lot of the labor market, right? Like the example I used, someone works at Amazon versus someone working in a nonprofit in a small town in Arkansas, right? So just my opinion. I know I'll probably get a lot of blowback on that one. So next one is the Fair Labor Standards Act. So let me check one more thing. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Appreciate it. So this is like one of the big laws you need to follow, right? Of course, you need to follow all of them, but you need to focus on this one right here. So this one sets the federal minimum wage overtime rule. So simple rule, and we can get into, why the federal minimum wage is still $7.25, but everything else has increased. That's a topic for another story. But also, we're going to get to exempt and non-exempt. So exempt is when you're exempt from an hourly rate. And so basically, if you're paying someone hourly, you have to pay for all hours worked and pay him time and a half overtime. And overtime, one thing people get confused for, let's suppose, Mary says, hey, small business owner, can I work overtime next week? And suppose you say no. But suppose Mary works overtime anyway, and she submits her, time card, whatever you want to call it, her time, whatever. And you're like, Mary, I'm not paying for overtime. Well, that's illegal. Even if you say no, even put a writing they can't work overtime, if they work overtime, you have to pay them time and a half. And different states have different rules. Like, for example, when I was in Alaska trying seafoods, like most places, it's, you hit 40 hours and the 41st hour is overtime. Like in Alaska, it's the first day of the week and you work 8 hours and you work 3 more hours that first day. those 3 hours are overtime, right? So you have to make sure you know the rules for different places. Let me think. So yeah, so overtime is a big thing. Like example I used before about the lady, the secretary working through lunch, and they didn't get paid overtime. That's an example. But this is a law that a lot of people get messed up, right? You have to pay people for overtime and the minimum wage. And of course, minimum wage is different places. Like not to talk politics and all, but like usually, quote unquote, more liberal places like New York City, Seattle, Bay Area, Austin, their minimum wage is gonna be way higher than $7.25. I think in Seattle now it's like $16.50, maybe $17. And I think the plan in Seattle is gonna eventually go up to $20 an hour minimum wage, right? So you have to be careful of that. Another thing too, like suppose this actually happened to me one time. I had a friend come to Dallas. He said, "Hey, I want to hire someone in Seattle." And he said, "Hey, I'm gonna pay him $7.25 like I do my people in Dallas." Like, you can't do that. He said, "Why not?" I'm in Dallas, and the minimum wage here in Dallas is $7.25. I said, "No, it's based on where the employee is, right?" So when paying minimum wage or any hourly rate is based on where the employee is at, right? So I said, "No, you have to pay this person whatever the minimum wage is, not what it is in Dallas." So be careful of that. And so example, non-exempt. So exempt is basically where overtime doesn't apply, right? These are usually like, for professionals, senior people, different. So, and there's different rules, and we'll go over the rules at a later time. But rules still apply, right? Like most people think, okay, I'm gonna pay this person a salary and I can make them work 80 hours a week. Well, be careful of that, because I know here in Seattle, there's a law that says if you make your people work 60 hours or more, regardless of their salary or non-salary, exempt, non-exempt, is against the rules, right? So you have to be careful of that. And obviously, you don't want to have people work 80, 100 hours a week and burn them out. But the thing with that, having the exempt, the reverse works too, right? Your employee can say, "I'm only working 20 hours this week because I get my job done in 20 hours," right? So just be careful of that. The different rules for different states, different locations. So keep that in mind. But main rule, you have to pay your non-exempt employees, your non-salary employees for all hours worked and time and a half for anything worked over 40 hours. But this one messes a lot of people up right here. Next, immigration, I-9 forms onboarding. So regardless of what your take is on immigration, illegal immigration, legal immigration, whatever the case may be, the rule is when you hire someone, they have 3 days to prove they can work in the United States, whatever form it is. So usually that's through the I-9, the onboarding process, different things, right? And so you hire someone on Monday. If they can't prove by Thursday that they can work in the United States, you can let them go, and nothing. That's the law, right? Now you do need give them some leniency, so to speak. Like suppose you hire on Monday, they come back and say, "Hey, I have my my passport, I-9, not my driver's license, whatever the case may be, whatever it is, and it's expired, but they can prove that they submitted for it, right? You have to let them get the new thing, get the thing in." Also, a good thing to use for this thing called E-Verify, where the government verifies it for you. You submit the I-9, they verify it for you. The I-9 form can be kind of tricky. So I-9 form, it needs to be verified by you, the small business owner, or your designated, person that does that for you, HR person. A lot of stuff is online now for I-9. So one thing I want to find out, because of course it's all the news now, like ICE is going through different places and taking people who are legal or not supposed to be working illegally. And that's been happening forever, right? Like when the government goes to a workplace and they say, "Hey, these 20 people, they're illegal, they're authorized in the United States." What I want to know is how come they don't find the place of business, right? Because if I'm a person with not documentation, I get a job and let me work there to make money, I'm not gonna say, "Hey, I'm not supposed to work here." To me, that should be more on the business owner, right? So I just wonder, do these small business owners get fined? What happens to them, right? Because they're the one who's the small business owner or the owner in general or the company or organization is supposed to validate that these people that hire can actually work in the United States. I've always wondered about that, so I need to find that out. But yeah, basically, I mean, and I went on a tangent there. But for this simple rule is you hire someone, they have 3 days to prove they work in the United States. And another thing too, so this is kind of weird. So you can't discriminate against people because they're not U.S. citizens. But then again, you can't hire them, right? So that's kind of like I don't know, kind of messed up, I think. So federal payroll tax. I mean, obviously, if you have employees, you need to pay for them to. What's the word I'm looking for? You need to pay for their payroll tax, all that kind of stuff. Let me try one more thing real fast. How do I put my fucking face on here? Trying to figure out how to put my face on here so people can see me. I know I did it the other day. No, I don't want that. No, don't want that. I know I did this the other day, but now today is not doing it. Okay. All right. So back to federal payroll tax. So basically withdraw, payroll taxes from employees. And we're going to go over differences between W-2, 1099s. One of the big differences, like 1099 contracts, you're not going to take this out. Take this stuff out of their paycheck. That's up to them. Also, same thing with Social Security. Like one thing I'm not really expert on payroll benefits or Social Security, like these things right here. But I have people to refer you to. But yeah, Social Security benefits, not benefits, Social Security, payroll taxes, you need to take out of your employees' paychecks. Next, American Disabilities Act. So basically, you cannot discriminate against anyone with disabilities. And this law has actually changed a little bit over the years, right? And you know what? Maybe backtrack. So yeah, all those previous laws you have to follow one person, and you come like one employee in your company. The next laws are people once you have 15 employees or more. So first one is American Disabilities Act. I think this was first passed during the first George Bush presidency, and it's changed significantly, right? And so when this law was first passed, it was like, for example, if someone will say, let me backtrack. So one thing with this, you need to have reasonable accommodations, right? So can someone do their job with a reasonable accommodation? So example, suppose there's a factory worker, and that factory worker needs to be able to stand. But this person, is in a wheelchair because he had a leg amputated, so he's in a wheelchair. Can you reasonably accommodate this person? So maybe like you lower the factory table down, or maybe you get him a higher wheelchair. Can you reasonably accommodate this disability? Now sometimes you can't, but most times you can, right? So reasonable accommodation is a big thing that gets a lot of people in trouble. So there's that. So you really cannot say something, I'm not going to hire just based on disability. You have to at least go through the reasonable accommodation thing. Now how this law has kind of changed. So back to the guy in the wheelchair. Like suppose he comes to you let me backtrack. So how the law was originally done, suppose someone's in a wheelchair for whatever reason. He had a leg amputated. The law would say, well, yes, he's disabled. But then let's suppose this guy put on 2 prosthetic legs, right? Now he can walk around, run, whatever. The law then said, oh, you're no longer disabled. This doesn't apply to him more. Well, I can't remember the year, but Congress said, this is kind of unfair. I don't like this law. So Congress passed a law that's retroactive that basically said, once you're disabled, always disabled. And what's important for you as a small business owner, if someone comes to you and says, hey, I want to claim a disability, you can't be like, you look perfectly fine, not disabled. They may have been disabled in the past, and now they're still counted as being disabled. I know that applies to a lot of military people. Now, a lot of the military people, they might not look disabled, but in reality, they're all right. So yeah, this one gets a lot of people in trouble too. The biggest one, this is the reasonable accommodations. Next, Pregnancy Discrimination Act. So my horror story on this, I had a good friend maybe a year ago, software developer. Um, she got laid off from one job, took some time off, started looking for another job. And while she looked for another job, she's like 6 months pregnant, right? So did some phone interviews and got an in-person interview. Went in there and they looked at us, oh, we didn't know you were pregnant. We're not gonna hire you as a pregnant person because like we need people all in for a company, right? And that's not the right thing to do. I told her she should go go sue whatever, but she didn't. She don't be bothered with it, right? And that's another reason I think a lot of companies get away with this. When they do bad things, the people they do bad things with, they just blow it off and don't do anything. So I would say if you're like something bad happens to you, like discriminated against, that go take action, like report it to someone, right? Because this is not going to get fixed unless you report it, right? But basically, you can't discriminate against someone if they're pregnant for any kind of reason. And you have to do, of course, reasonable accommodations, light duty, that kind of thing. And one thing that's me personally, so to me it's crazy, like with females, like most companies that give you like females like 6 months off maternity leave. That's to me, that's nowhere near enough. Like 6 weeks of bomb with your kid, like, that's insane. I don't know, that's crazy. But then again, from the company side, like, can you really afford, especially as a small business owner, can you really afford to pay, Mary for 2 years? I mean, it has to be some kind of like balance, right? I don't know. I'm not smart enough to solve that problem. But yeah, but pregnancy discrimination, unfortunately, is still a big thing. So make sure you don't discriminate against people who are pregnant. I'm thinking too, obviously you bring someone for an interview to hire them. You're impressed by them. And so just, yeah, where I'm going with this. Yeah, just, don't do the right thing on this one. All right. So next one, Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act. And so with this one, what happened in the past, a lot of companies, they would do testing for health insurance or whatever. So it's happening with the health testing, medical testing. It will come back, hey, Jason's genetically predisposed to have, XYZ disease. And because this will increase your insurance premiums. So a lot of companies were not hiring people based on this genetic testing because they don't want their health insurance premiums to go up, right? Which, of course, is against the law, right? And this is you have to do this at employee number 15. So you can still do, I think you can still do genetic testing. I think I should know this also. But you cannot use it for an employment decision, right? You can't say, I'm not going to hire you because your genetics are predisposed or you have cancer, lung disease, whatever the case may be. So definitely against the law. So next one, this is like the biggest federal civil rights law. So this one, Title VII, Civil Rights Act of 1964, prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin, right? So you can't fire anyone, you cannot fire anyone because any of these items, or you can't hire anyone, or you cannot hire anyone because of these reasons, right? You can't say, I'm not hiring you because you're white, or you're black, or you're Jewish, or whatever the case be, right? Or color, religion, right? So this is a big one, right? And this, unfortunately, still gets a lot of people in trouble, right? So this makes you follow these rules. So next one, this was recently passed. So this was backtracked. So Supreme Court case in 2020 basically applied workplace protections for the LGBTQ community back to 1964. So basically, now all this here prohibits discrimination on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin, and now includes LGBTQ community. So same thing applies across the board. So next one, so let me backtrack. I actually gave the answer away. I was about to ask you what demographic do you think did not apply to? And the answer is age discrimination, right? So technically, up to like 1967, this law not applied. So in 1967, Congress finally figured out, well, we missed discrimination against people older than 40 people. But the other laws apply to age 15. Employee number 15, age discrimination does not apply to employee number 20. So legally and technically, every company in the United States can discriminate against people over 40 before employee number 19. Obviously, you don't want to do that. Highly recommend you don't do that. But yeah, that's out there, right? And the age is 40, right? Another side note, people might not know this, but like people talk about unemployment, underemployment. I think most people don't know is like the demographic with the highest unemployment rate and the highest unemployment rate is military spouses by far, right? I think the unemployment rate is like 20 to 25%. And underemployment rate is like 80%, you know. So keep in mind, if you need a real good worker, check out military spouses. But yeah, this isn't saying this is like at 20 employees or more. I wonder if they're ever going to change this. Next one, COBRA. So if your company has health benefits and someone leaves, you're required to give them a COBRA benefits, like so they keep their health insurance. I think it's for a year. To me, I really don't see this as a benefit. I mean, maybe I could be wrong, but like usually as a small business, as an employee, you're gonna help pay the co-payment. Suppose the actual premium is like, we'll say $500 a month, and you're paying $300 of it. So another person, to keep his benefit, has to pay the whole $500. So I don't know. I could be wrong in this. I just don't see it as a benefit for the employee. I could be wrong, of course, but benefits is really not my thing. So, but yeah, but COBRA, you're required to keep your COBRA coverage. So next one, misclassifying workers. A lot of people get this wrong, right? For example, I had a customer a while ago, and they hired a contractor to do the social media. And for whatever reason, they had a disagreement. The company let the social media contractor go. The contractor got kind of mad, pissed off, and so the social media contractor deleted all the social media, like took everything off the internet. I mean, just deleted everything, right? Like a year worth of content gone, right? And so small business owner called the contractor, hey. And then the contractor, hey, I need my last 2 weeks of pay. The small business like, I'm not paying you last 2 weeks until you put this stuff back on there. What do you think this is? And the social media contractor, well, if you don't give me my pay, I'm gonna go to the Department of Labor here in Seattle and file a complaint against you. And the person like, okay, do what you want to do. You're an employee, whatever, And so I talked to small business. I said, let me see the contract agreement we had to do. And basically the small business owner was treating the social media person like an employee, right? The employee had to be there. The contractor had to be every day 9 to 5. The small business owner had to prove everything, right? And so basically, it's like I said, hey, I can't speak for the Department of Labor is going to say, but they filed this. I believe they're going to say that this person is an employee, and you're going to have to pay this person back these 2 weeks, and plus you're going to get fined. Oh, and on top of that, you got 20 other people who sell contractors. They're going to probably presume that if you treat this one person like an employee, you're treating the other 20 people like an employee. And so that's more fines, right? And so just be very careful how you misclassify workers or how you classify workers, right? Like here on the screen, 1099 contractor, they basically, you give them like left and right limits. They're going to control how the work is done. They handle their own taxes, right? I think a lot of people get this wrong. Just because you say someone's a contractor does not mean they're a contractor, right? There's definitely different rules on this. And so thanks for attending this. Like I said, my name is Jason Cavness, CEO, founder of Cavness HR. We're building an AI native HR platform for small business. It's going to automate compliance for you. It's going to be like a self-driving car for HR. It's going to detect future potential HR challenges for you. It's basically going to handle everything HR for you. And it's built specifically for companies with 49 or fewer people. So last thing, we are doing a refund here at Cavness HR. Refund lets anyone invest up to $100 to our refunder. And our automated native built AI platform is going to automate HR. It's going to prevent fines, audits, and lawsuits. And I want to thank you for your time. I know it's a quick down and dirty. I mean, each slide we did, it can probably do another hour webinar on there. So if you have any questions, be sure to reach out to me. I'm all over the internet. Probably the best place, probably LinkedIn, Jason Cavness. My email is jasoncavness@cavanesshr.com. The refund is on the screen, refunded.com/cavanesshr. I want to thank you for your time. That's bullshit. Thank you for your time, and remember to be great every day.